Welcome to the Lessons from Sports podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Partello, and welcome, if you're watching this on video, to the new Cuento offices. It has just been a lot of work to get ready to get this place open and a new studio for me, which is really exciting. Going through this process of getting our office ready for opening here in 2025, there was a lot that goes into it, and it was a learning process for me, which is a great segue into today's guest. Josh Elias and his partners had an idea, which turned into a business, which then turned into a brand new arena in Oceanside, California called Front Wave Arena. We started working with Josh and his team a few months ago to help them get ready for launch with the move of the San Diego Clippers, the LA Clippers G League team, which were not the San Diego Clippers at the time, but now are the San Diego Clippers yet again. And the move of the San Diego Sockers up to Oceanside and everything that goes along with opening a brand new building. This conversation talks about Josh's career prior to this venture and everything that he did in business, and then all of the learnings that he's had so far in, going from dirt to a brand new arena opening here. So I know you're going to love this conversation, a really fun one with Josh Elias. So enjoy. All right, I have been looking forward to this one from the time that I met you to actually sit down and dive into Josh. Like, we met on a business side. We've had one little time of getting to know each other, but today I get to dive in deep with you, and I'm looking forward to it. So I'm excited to introduce Josh Elias to the audience. And Josh, why don't you do me and all of us a little bit? Tell us a little bit about your journey, where you are today, and how that all came to be.
Yeah, I'm excited too, Wayne. I mean, you and I have not only been friends but colleagues, and in business, a lot of times that ends up being the trend, and it's usually the path for great relationships, which we all know relationships are a key point of any business. So, for me, today, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Front Wave Arena. My path has been definitely different than most paths out there, and I love to tell the story because I know it's a one percenter type of story. And I hope that every young or dreamer out there can see that there is hope and there's a path. And, I'll walk through a little bit of it, but I was born in Los Angeles and ended up growing up in Escondido, California, and loved it. And it was a great place to grow up, and then went to Vegas for 15 years and started my business, and came back home in 2011. Sold my business in 16, and then, started the arena project in 2021. So I'm sure we'll dig into all these things, but let me know what you want to know. I'm happy to tell the story and give the mission.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think, one of the things that we connected on right away was this industry, we talk about the lessons from sports as the sports industry translates into every industry, and this mystification of sports. It's we always talk, we try to demystify brand and demystify. It's a business is a business is a business. And yes, you have to have a passion for it. Sports as a business is a little bit more taxing. It's a little bit more consuming. It's a little bit more high profile, but at the end of the day, at the core, at the root of it all, comes down to numbers. It comes down to driving sales. It comes down to customer satisfaction. I mean, you name the KPIs, they're the same no matter where you sit.
That's right. And again, I don't come from the sports industry. This is fairly new to me in the past 5 years, but coming into it with the perspective of being, a business owner, I've never essentially worked for anybody but myself. And I looked at this in a way very similar. It doesn't matter what you're making, if you're in a service business, you're making widgets. At the end of the day, a business is a business, and it comes down to numbers and it comes down to people. And if you can figure the right formula out, then there isn't a business that you can't do. And for me, coming into this with a fresh perspective, coming from, I was in the repossession business and the collection business and the finance business, and, definitely a unrewarding business at the end of the day. You don't get Christmas cards at the end of the year for what you do. And, every month it's what have you done for me lately? But as I came into this, obviously we grew up in the sports world. I mean, I played sports my entire life through junior college, and, it was always fascinating. We always visioned that you want to be a part of the sports world. And, when I had the opportunity to kind of learn the real estate development, learn venue management, and learn sports, I really took that as that opportunity, because there's not a lot of times in your life that you can reinvent yourself completely into a different industry, specifically one that you enjoy and it's fun. And so I think, as and your team know, I have a fresh perspective when it comes to what we're doing here at Front Wave Arena and at the San Diego Sockers, at the San Diego Clippers, because I came from a place that was much tougher. From a business standpoint, margins are very small. You're being grinded. I came from a service business where you're only as good as your last repossession, and there's always more, and everybody wants more. So coming into this, where you actually get to see smiles on people's faces, people congratulate you, and you get some instant gratification of the work you've done, has been probably the most meaningful for me. And it keeps me invigorated and excited to keep, building and growing throughout this sports side.
Yeah, and when we first moved, the thing I always said, a few people that had recommended us to meet you, and in the follow-up conversation, I said my favorite thing about people in power is when they admit their strengths and their weaknesses, right? And it's like, that is, for me, when I got my head around that and confident enough to say what I was good and not good at, is when my career changed, right?
Sure.
And your first time we met, you're like, I got this part, this part, this part. Gonna need help right here and right here, and then we're gonna be great. And it was like, yeah, no, we fit in one of those right here's, and it was a fun conversation. But that is, and you said it to me the other day, was like, listen, I'm looking for the advice. Like, I think that is a separator of a business leader, and definitely something that you possess for sure.
Yeah, I ask a lot of dumb questions. I mean, when I came into this, I
Not dumb, right?
sat in a room with people that have been doing this for 30 years, whether it's real estate development, entitlement, design, and really, I have a background a little bit on, a few of those things, but, really for me, I just wanted to ask a million questions. And you really, I think it comes down to having the confidence to sit in a room with a lot of very smart, wealthy people who've been successful in a business that you're walking into, but putting your ego away, checking it at the door, and having the confidence to come in there and ask questions, not be afraid of what the answers are or what it makes you look like. And I think over the course of time, people really respected us for, that approach. And like you mentioned, there are no egos here. I don't know half of what you've forgotten in this business, which makes this even more exciting, because I feel like there's so much to learn and we're doing very well. But, I everything I do, I look for ceilings, right? And, the reason why I'm no longer in the business I was in, because I was at the ceiling. There was no more growth. There was just nothing more for me to achieve as a business owner. So for me, there's so much to achieve here, and I can't wait for the next stage of learning, which is almost like every day, to be honest.
Yeah, and the whole concept of Front Wave Arena is, and building a privately owned and operated, funded, arena in North County, San Diego, is just unheard of. Like, nobody, I've been here now this 11 years in San Diego, and gosh, stadium and arena talk and building has been on the docket since the day I arrived, right? And it was for years before that, right? When Petco Park got built, it was a big part of the sort of ethos of the community. How, why, like, what, this is obviously an amazing asset for North County, San Diego. As someone who lives right in that North County area, like, it's huge for my family. Like, I'll tell you that, like, we have already gone to a San Diego Clippers game and probably going again this week. Like, we are like, that is, my kids are like all in. They loved the experience. But like, what got you guys to that point, and how did that happen?
I mean, it really started with the vision of moving the San Diego Sockers from Pechanga. I mean, ultimately it came down to, a business, right? And making a business decision of a franchise that, my partner, Phil Salvaggio, really was passionate about. I mean, really, he loves the San Diego Sockers. He played on the team back in the early 90s. His passion is, really, it is soccer. He's the head coach, and he really wanted to he resurrected the franchise after 10 years of being dormant. And I think for him, it was more about, how do I get into a situation where this business, isn't costing me money to go out and have a great time and have do the things I love. And to do that, really, it's the dynamics and the model of, renting from a very large, oversized arena to, a second tier professional sports team. So that's how it started. And, I came in as an investor with Phil on the real estate side and transitioned over into more. But really, I think the ethos is exactly what you said. There's nothing here. We grew up in this community. We've all loved being here. We can't imagine ever going anywhere else. And, fortunately, we have a pretty thick network of friends and community. And one happened to be the master plan developer of the El Cortizone 450-acre master plan community. So you kind of put these concepts together of, why do you want to go up there with the team? Well, we obviously know why, because it's a great market, and we love soccer, and soccer is blowing up, especially with World Cup coming up, right? And then having the opportunity to potentially acquire the land to build an arena on, and then figuring out, how do you design it? How do you execute it? How do you develop it? And then what the heck do you do with it when it's built?
Right.
A lot going into it. It's great. I hear all the time, oh, build it, they will come. That is completely not true. That is a movie, and this is not Field of Dreams. You can build whatever you would like. It doesn't promise that there will be enough people in there to make it a profitable business. So, I just want to make sure everybody out there knows that. Maybe there are some cases out there that are different, but this is definitely not the case. This takes intentional effort every step of the way. It takes a massive commitment. And I think, to your point, Wayne, the reason why it doesn't happen is because it's hard. It's very hard. The percentage of you being able to pull something like this off are very low for so many different reasons, whether it's building it within a municipality that hasn't done it before, like Oceanside.
Right.
They don't have anything like that. So they're learning on the job as well when it comes to this project. Having it privately funded, that's great and dandy, but what's happened to the capital markets in the past 4 years since COVID? Not very good. It's very challenging to do anything in the capital markets. And then, you look at the supply chain. If you guys remember, during COVID, the ports were backed up in Long Beach and all the ports throughout the country. Well, that means that you don't get product. And this is a predominantly steel and concrete building. So if you don't get steel and concrete, you don't build the building. And if it costs you triple to do it, then your costs go up tremendously. So again, this is not an easy thing to do. And I think the biggest thing, and the reason why it got done, was because of the commitment of the ownership, staying true to the vision, but really being able to control our destiny and take chances where most, larger institutions or a municipality probably wouldn't have taken a chance. And hopefully that resonates to the community, and telling this story a little bit about what it took to get here, because it wasn't easy. It wasn't cheap. And it was really a huge feat to be able to pull this off. And we are so proud and happy we did it, because everybody comes in now and I see the smile on their face, Wayne, just like you do. And,
no doubt,
it's pretty amazing, to be honest.
Sports is special. We talk about this all the time, is they're usually small, mid-sized businesses, right, that have an over amplified brand opportunity, right? And revenue opportunity and impact opportunity to make a difference in the community. And, with Front Wave Arena and the teams and just the business that you guys are building, the opportunity to, opening night with Simone Biles opening her world tour, inside a Front Wave Arena. I mean, just watching the faces of, little kids coming through, and, the impact that you can have on the lives in the community. And it takes business leaders. It takes people who have come from all different walks of life. I worked for a few gentlemen down the road who, had experience in the world, right? Like Ron Fowler had owned the San Diego Sockers, but like he hadn't owned a Major League Baseball team. It was a dream of his. He did it. Peter Seidler's family had been in baseball. He wanted to get into baseball. But again, they were walking in, this was a whole new experience for them, and when you work for Ron Fowler, he doesn't care where you came from. He wants you to understand that you now work in his business, and this is how we're going to run this business. And yes, there's going to be changes. There's going to be evolution, but this is going to be a business that, he's going to put his arms around and make sure he knows is financially solvent and financially responsible as he goes forward. And it was a really amazing experience for those of us who worked in it to learn so much. And, everything that we all brought to the table was, part of that ecosystem, but it was driven by his understanding and belief on where it was going, and really powerful. How have you guys now in what you're doing? How did the Clippers thing come to be? How did you got this new G League team, but a brand that was sitting dormant that is just amazing, by the way, and beloved in this community. Our corporate attorney is the biggest San Diego Clippers fan, and he was just like, "Have you seen that the Clippers?" And I'm like, "No, we work with them." Like, he was dying. He was like, "Oh, you hadn't put it together that the contract with Frontwave Arena was also the Clippers are involved." But how does that come to be?
I mean, you envision, trying to have permanent tenants in your building, and there's only so many that you can have. So you create a list of who fits into your culture, right? And because we own and operate the San Diego Sockers, we have the ability to leverage and create efficiencies within our sports management groups to spread that love to other departments and teams. If you think about how sport franchises work, typically, if you're not in the top four, these are teams that work, through 4 or 5 months, and then they, really slow down until the next season. So you're moving people around within an organization, or you're letting them go for the year, bringing them back. And our goal here is, because we have such a great team, we want to create a year-round product for our employees and for our business. It becomes much more sustainable. But after looking at how do we do that, you want to bring other teams in here that you can, essentially manage similar to the way you're managing your other teams. And so the Clippers were in Ontario. And if you think about the G League 10 years ago is much different than it was today. In fact, I think it was called the P League, to be honest.
Yeah.
But typically those are developmental leagues. They didn't get a lot of love from the big teams. Some of the big teams really utilized their G League and their developmental teams properly, but a lot of them didn't. It was about 50-50, say 5 years ago, of who was really using their G League team right. But as we looked at it, we saw them in Ontario. We knew their deal was coming up. Obviously, you look at the organization and who you're partnering with. Steve Ballmer and Gillian Zucker are amazing business people. They're in the process of building their own $2 billion arena. But if you think about the mission and what they're doing over there in Los Angeles with the Clippers, it's very similar at a much larger scale than what we're doing, right? They got the Los Angeles Clippers that they own and operate. They own and operate the Forum, the Kia Forum, right next door to their new building. They're building the Intuit Dome, and it's all being ran by a small group of owners. And similar to what we're doing here, we're a small group of owners. We have a team we own, and we're running other teams as well. So at a much smaller scale, but if you think about the process and the logistics, it's very similar. We're not doing things much different, just different budgets, right? And at the end of the day, it's about having the right people to do it. And we looked at the team, we looked at what they were doing in Ontario. They were averaging, call it 800 people a game. They had maybe 150 to 200 season ticket holders. There wasn't any money pumped into that business to try to grow it. It really was a developmental team, and it was strictly for basketball, and it was more of a burden than it was a benefit. And I believe this is a testament to the Los Angeles Clippers and Steve Ballmer as well, as they started looking at their team, right? If you think about who was on the Los Angeles Clippers 2-3 years ago, you have big names on there like a Paul George, a Kawhi Leonard. These guys are at some point no longer going to be on that team. So what are your other avenues of acquiring players? Well, it's through the draft and developing those players, or it's through trade. And so you really don't have 10 funnels that you can acquire new players. And, as being, part of the Padres for a long time, 1 out of 100 make it to be that star player. It's just not common. It's very hard to do. A lot of it has to do with timing. And so we just looked at the dynamics of what they were doing in Ontario, and we put together a really compelling story for the ownership team at the Los Angeles Clippers. Hey, move 50 miles further, which is a hard thing to get somebody to do, because they do have 2 or 3 two-way players on these teams where they'll play on a Tuesday on the G League, and then they'll play on a Thursday on the big team. Okay, we have to convince them to move a little further. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to offer them a very beautiful venue. We're going to build out the locker rooms and the gyms to be top class for a G League facility, but we also are going to house the players, because we have the opportunity in the community. Our partners are building the apartments right across the street. So, being able to create a campus type of environment work environment for the team and the players and the coaches to be
Sure.
in the same place at the same time, that really was very compelling to them. And we actually run the San Diego Clippers. So we are the San Diego Clippers. We do entire front office work for the team. So again, the team goes from being a low revenue generating machine, not a lot of attention paid to it, to where they become the number one tenant in the building. Somebody else is doing all the work. They're not renting. In fact, they're getting money now. And now their players want to play. They want to be in San Diego. And we've seen that over the course of the season, where these guys get to stay at the Mission Pacific in downtown Oceanside on the road. Beautiful. They get to play in a brand new venue. So now we're starting to see teams get excited to come to play the Clippers in the G League. Well, what does that do for the Los Angeles Clippers? It gets players who want to play on this team. And if there's a decision that needs to be made, whether you want to play here or there, you want them to want to be in your building. And that just increases your chances of finding that star player somewhere that's going to participate and contribute on the big team. So
I've told this story on the podcast before, but it is exactly that. When I first got to the Padres, one of the first projects that ownership was taking on was building out the family room at Petco Park, where the players' families and the kids would go play. And I thought that was an interesting choice. And I asked the question of Ron Fowler. I said, "Hey, Ron, why that? Like, of everything that we have to do," he was like, "Well, here's the thing. Players talk, and we don't do a good job of taking care of our players right now. And it's hurting us in free agency." Sure. And one of these players is going to be asked one day, who takes care of how, hey, I'm considering these three teams, where should I go? And he's going to reach out to veteran guys and ask that question. Well, fast forward, one of the guys on that team who I've actually had on the podcast was Yonder Alonso. His brother-in-law is Manny Machado, and his sister was there as a sister of Yonder watching. And the decision, when it came down to, obviously the money was this, great, all these things, but there was decisions to be made, as Yonder explained it. And he said, we saw the difference of this ownership group and the way they were taking care of the players and their families. And that matters to everybody. And I was like, wow, that's a strategy that you deployed in 2014 that played out and benefits that you just don't see as a fan. You don't see that investment that you made in this little area over here that nobody will ever see, that is actually the catalyst to get the ball rolling, to say, hey, no, this is a different group. This is a group. And again, when it comes down to that coin toss, right? Mm-hmm. You want all the advantages you can create for your players and for your organization to win that coin toss. I love it. That's a great story. I love that, man.
It's an intangible, right? And it doesn't cost anything to do that. It just takes time and care. And if you think about what Ron Fowler did, not much different. He came from a different industry, not very rewarding every day. But he went and took those same strategies and work ethic and applied it to the sports side of it. Very similar to what we're doing here. It doesn't, you don't have to be doing this for 20 years to run a good business. You just have to care more than everybody else and work harder. And those two things are free. They don't cost anything. And it really comes down to that. And there are a lot of things.
He used to remind me, his money was made a half a cent a time, right? He was like, remember, it was like,
there's a lot of things in businesses, you can't control, and you can beat yourself every day about it. But there are just some things you can't control. But the things you can control, you should control. You should think about them, and you should be intentional. And they don't cost anything. And it becomes viral when other people see you doing that. And that's why, again, you see me every day in my office. My door is open for two reasons, because it's open for the staff, but I want them to hear me in there hustling. I want them to hear me on the phone, talking on the phone, hustling on the phone. How do I talk to people? How do I treat people? How do tough situations get, fixed on a phone call? If they don't hear it, they don't learn about it, and they will not develop. And that's another free way to train and educate your people. And you do set the standard, by doing it.
100%. And listen, there's going to be a coin toss down the line for staff too. And they're going to have to decide. I've had that conversation, as I know you have, many a times with someone sitting across my desk. And it was like, look, they have more money to offer you right now. I get it. Like, you got to do what's best for you. Here's everything I can offer you. Here's all the things. And I've had people go and I've had people stay, but always for the right reasons, right? Whenever I'm giving advice, I never tell anybody what to do. I always lay it out and give them the questions they need to be asking themselves and let them make that decision for themselves. And I literally, I love it when they come back and they say, obviously it feels amazing when they're like, no, I choose to stay on your team. But I also love it when they chose to go elsewhere. Like, and because they did it for the right reasons. It wasn't just for, oh, it's an extra whatever amount of money. I get money is important. But when you're young and in your career and you're growing, sometimes there are things that are more beneficial to your long-term revenue opportunity, your income opportunities than just the initial small bump that you may get today. And I think you're 100% right. Them hearing and learning, I think that's a great lesson to keep the door open. And it's a good opportunity for us to transition, which is the whole concept of why we're here, which is a lesson from sports, right? My whole thing is you don't have to have worked in sports. You could be a fan of sports. You could have played sports as a kid. You played sports all the way through JC. Like what's something that you took away from the world, from a game that you apply to business in your life that has really made a difference for you?
I mean, again, being self-employed majority of my life, it really is, I have to apply myself for the livelihood of my family. That doesn't come free. It takes a lot of work and a lot of heart and a lot of stomach. Not very different than if you were playing a sport. There are critical moments in every sport. Not all the time, but there are critical moments in any game. Whether you're playing football, baseball, basketball, it's really how well are you prepared to react in those critical moments. The way that I look at things is really I'm the head coach of this team, right? People come to work for their coach. They come to work for their supervisor. The way that I've always looked at it was that way. So if you're a low entry level type of employee, you come to work every day for that person above you. You want to make sure that you're doing right by them. You want to make them proud, but that is your barrier, and it's very similar to a sports team. The quarterback is the quarterback of the team, but everybody has to play together. And in those critical moments, and I would apply that to business because, there are critical moments and really it comes down to decision making, right? We're not, reactionary here physically, but we are reactionary, when it comes to a business standpoint. So making decisions and being intentional with those decisions, I think bringing that ethos to the business and creating a culture where people aren't afraid of tough moments. Because if you go through any business and you think you're going to just coast through and everything is going to be great and go back to that, you build it, they will come, you're fooling yourself and you will not be ready for those tough moments. And, I don't know how often those tough moments and those decisions happen. You want to minimize those from happening, but when they do happen, you just want to be prepared. And I think if you were in a team sport or an individual sport, really the difference between winning and losing is coming down to those critical moments and how do you react in those moments. And that's what I would apply to kind of how we build our business.
I love that. And it's so funny because you had to build a physical structure, right? There's a clear watching you build it so that there's an understanding that Front Wave Arena did not happen overnight, right? But you've worked in other businesses. You've built other businesses where people are like, oh, Josh, gosh, you've gotten so lucky. Like, that's unbelievable. And you're like, wait, this didn't happen today. Like, we deal with it, right? Like, people are like, oh my God, I want to do what you did. Like, it's like, whoa. There's a lot of prep, a lot of work, a lot of gut-wrenching, terrifying moments along the way that, I like. The preparation for that moment is a real one because there are those, as much as you try to mitigate them, I think every week in business, there's tough decisions that have to be made. And it's not always going to be the most popular decision you're ever going to make, right? Like the team around you may not love the fact that the coach decided it was going to be a running play next because the wide receiver wanted the ball, right? But if those decisions are made for the best reasons with full line of sight as to what's going on, if the team is bought in, the team is bought in, and that takes all of that work, all of that prep so that team is bought into that leader and willing to go, you know what? I don't agree with it, but I'm all in. Let's go. We're going to push this line as hard as we can right now. And I think that's a big one in business for sure.
And when you make mistakes, you don't point fingers. And listen, a coach doesn't call the best play every time,
No doubt.
but you don't see the players going and pointing at the coach from the field. They just keep going and they have faith that, there is a track record and there's a reason why that person is the coach, right? There's a reason why that person is the quarterback. And the same here. If you can create a culture where people have faith that a majority of the time you're going to make the right decisions, because you're never going to be perfect. And if you
No
think
doubt.
you are, you've already failed. And I think that's really a big thing for us is, hey, let's make decisions, but let's not worry if we make mistakes. Let's learn from them. My biggest thing is let's not make the same mistake twice,
That's it.
and if you could prevent that, then you minimize the times that you're exposed.
I just had this conversation with an employee the other day, and I was like, you made a mistake. It's okay. Like, no one's getting fired today because you made it, but we're going to learn from it. And what I try to do now is we'll have a team meeting and we'll review the mistake that was made. Not to make that person feel bad. That person's already acknowledged it. We've already learned from it, but to teach the lesson to everybody else so that, like, hey, this is what happened. Here was the thought process. Makes sense. I get it, but it went a little awry here. We don't want to go left there. We want to go right when we make those
Mm-hmm.
decisions moving forward. And everybody understands it. There's a little humility to it. There's a little understanding. My favorite is when the mistake is mine, because I love pointing out that to your point, nobody is perfect. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to screw up in the trenches from time to time, but hopefully, we're averaging over 80% better, results. But you should be making mistakes. If you're not pushing the envelope, right, and you're not trying new things, then how are you able to get better and improve your team and do all the things that you need to do? Or otherwise, you're just standing still, right? If you take the safe route every day, we're not sitting in Front Wave Arena watching the San Diego Clippers play. Like, you're just not. It's just the reality of the situation.
Yep, it
It's
takes a lot, as you know. I mean, you guys are a huge part of it, and again, we've tapped a lot of really good, experienced people, whether they're internal or external,
sure.
and there's a lot of examples. Specifically folks like the Scott Marshalls of the world who have come in here and really elevated the food and beverage experience.
Mhm.
From the same background that you guys had, but listen, there are certain things and people in this industry that seem to have a great understanding of specific niches. And if you put everybody together, you build a winning combination. And so, as you look at our business, we really push to try to create an elevated experience.
Yeah, I love it. All right, we're going to transition because as a business owner, there's a place where you sit every so often. We talked about it, making those tough decisions. It's the hot seat. So you got to sit there and take the rapid fire coming at you. So rapid fire questions, you just let them fly.
All right.
What's your best sports memory?
Probably high school football, playing the playoffs. I played at Chaminade in Los
Okay.
Angeles, beating Hart High School. They had the best quarterback in the league, and beating those guys. That was my best memory.
What position did you play?
I played receiver and strong safety.
Got it.
So
You were that receiver wanting the ball when they ran the running play. I get it.
I was on defense watching the best quarterback in the city, pick us apart and had to
Wow,
prevent that from happening. That was probably my best memory. Yeah.
that's amazing.
Or I got one more. I did play in the Little League World Series. So
You
that
did?
yeah, that was pretty amazing. Yes. As
Wow,
in the senior majors. Yeah, we made it all the way to the Western Regionals, and it was pretty awesome.
that's
Never
amazing.
never forget that moment.
Who's the best coach you've ever had?
Um, Best coach would have been Coach Lawson. Yeah, at Chaminade at
Okay.
football, we weren't supposed to be very good. Played against some major Catholic schools in Los Angeles during a time where there was a lot of stars out there, and he was the best coach I've had
Scariest moment while trying to get Front Wave Arena built.
every day. No. Um, we had a general contractor who just didn't make it and having to pivot to a new general contractor
Oh, wow.
during in the middle of construction. Probably the most difficult thing ever to do, whether you've been doing it 20 years or not. Hardest thing to do to get somebody to come in. And we made some really good decisions on who we brought in. And again, this job wouldn't have got done unless we were prepared to make those critical decisions in those critical times.
Yeah, that's a big one. Wow. All right. So That must have been a scary, dark moment, right? When was the moment on the other end of the tunnel where you saw the light and you're like, "We're gonna get there. We're gonna land."
When Simone Biles started loading in. Uh,
That was it?
Yeah, that was it. I mean, we're still painting, we're still, screwing things in. And, Simone Biles did come as a part of our deal a week ahead of her performance.
Right.
And she did that to train and rehearse and actually build her show. So as she loaded in about a week before we were done, having the U.S. Olympic gymnastics team in the building every day practicing, was really surreal. I even took a moment to go out there during one morning and they're stretching on the mat. And I asked, the head director there, hey, can I talk to these guys for a little bit? And I really sat there, and it was amazing having all these, amazing athletes and Simone Biles and Jordan Childs sitting there looking up at me. Who's this guy? And I really just wanted to thank them for being a part of what we were doing here. And hopefully they understood what this meant to us and that
Yeah.
it would always be a part of this building, being the opening act, but really
Mhm.
wanted to make sure that they knew that. And I think it went a long way. We got another show out of it. I mean, we ended up selling out 2 shows, and those were great moments.
They were, and it was I'll tell you, like, from an outside perspective, because I was outside when you guys landed that show. We were talking and having some great dialogue, but it was a validity. It was a validation from the industry that they were going to place real stuff in this building that didn't exist a year ago, right? Like, it was like, hey, we're working with, when Simone Biles, the GOAT, is coming, and it's been, out of everywhere to go, she chose right here in Oceanside at Front Wave Arena to launch this tour. That was a pretty powerful validation. I'm sure it felt that way for you, but even for me, I was like, oh, these guys are, that was a moment where I was like, oh, this is going to be something special.
Yeah, I agree. And that was the kickoff. And since then, honestly, I think about some of the moments and think, well, how can you better a Simone Biles show? I mean, we had an NBA game here. That, to me, that
Right.
was amazing. I mean, the vibe, it was electric. And then we've had concerts, even this last weekend, we had our first Latin concert. And I got to tell you, I probably haven't been to a lot of Latin shows in my life. That was probably one of the best concerts I've ever been to. And it's because of the people. They're
Sure.
dancing, they're happy. And I guess it's biased for me because I came from such a challenging industry.
Right.
Anytime I see people really enjoying what we put together, it just means a lot to me. So again, to say I've had the best moment in this arena, I'd be foolish to say so because it seems like every other show,
Yeah.
becomes a better moment. It was really cool.
You're doing it right when you keep topping your best moments, and that's like the magic of what we get to do is like, all right, we did that, that was amazing, how do we make it better? I love that stuff, and I know that that's in the in your DNA is like, okay, we accomplished that, it's great, what's next, how do we get better and better and better? And sometimes staff, that's a lot, it's daunting, but I
Mhm.
will tell you, like, just this is, I'm putting my consultant hat on for a minute here, but like, I had in the last year two former employees who worked for me at the Padres who are now at other teams, and I happened to see them on when I was on my tour of ballparks,
Mhm.
and come to me and say, "Hey, I want you to know it was tough. Like, you held a really hard standard and you drove a really tight ship, but you don't realize and you don't appreciate how good it was until you don't have that anymore." And it wasn't, you led the team, but our team came together fighting for a cause, and we were in it together, and we drove. And I was like, gosh, I'll tell you what, man, that to me, and like in the moment, you're like, man, we're really grinding today. We're constantly trying to get better. But when you walk away from it in their careers, they're set up for much better success. And they now realize the difference of a leadership that is setting the standards to be not only good. Sure, you can open your doors, you can build that they will come. How do you be great at this and constantly improving is the key to that. I love that. Favorite spot you go on vacation?
I'm a Hawaii guy. I just
Yeah.
never had time. Yeah,
Where do you go?
I like Hawaii. I like
Okay.
Maui. To be honest with you, I like any island out there. We work so hard that I'm not really picky. Just get me
Yeah.
out of here. Make it so I don't have to make decisions, and let me just lay on the beach. And I'm pretty simple.
Yeah, I'm the king of a swim up bar, man. You give me a swim up bar, you're gonna be really good friends. uh what's favorite TV show you've watched this year?
Um, I'm a Yellowstone guy. I
Okay.
just we've been involved, and we've been working with some of the actors in there, with different things, trying to put some stuff together. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a Yellowstone guy, but I'm not picky. Any Taylor Sheridan really, I think in the past couple of years has been amazing. So
That's
I'll give
great.
all of them a shot. They're all pretty great.
Yeah, when you find like something that works for you, it's like it's the best to dive in. I love it. All right, last one.
All right,
Must eat food at Front Wave Arena. What's your go-to?
man.
There's some good food.
There's some good food. I got two. I'm gonna have to go with a Tanner Prime burger, best
Okay.
burger in town. A lot of people don't know about it unless you're from Oceanside.
Yep.
Um, that just massive smash burger is amazing, but you got to always get the Cardiff Crack tri-tip sandwich too.
Yeah.
I to be honest with you, I think all our food's amazing with gelati. And
It's tough, man. It's tough.
I'm sorry, but I would go probably burger, Cardiff Crack, pizza,
Yeah.
in that order, but maybe not in that order.
I got to tell you, we were there. I saw you. We were there for a lacrosse tournament, and we went over, and they were doing the barbecue outside.
Yep.
That was some of the best brisket I've ever had in my entire life. Like, it was so incredible. I was like, what are we doing? This is so good. The food, just the Brant beef is just incredible. So it's awesome. You guys have done an amazing job. Okay. The last segment here is just providing some value. The opportunity for a young person to, now that you're in the building, it's a little bit easier, but just in general, right? There's young Wayne, there's a young Josh out there, there's a young everybody, right? What advice would you give somebody who at any age, because I love that you said that earlier, who had that dreamer that they wanted, that there was this, there was something they wanted to go after that was a little pie in the sky. What advice would you give that person?
Sorry, we broke up a little bit there,
Oh,
but
no, you're good.
yeah, you know what? I can tell you as a young Josh, I was very aggressive when it came to um, working hard, and I always thought, I can outwork everybody, and you spend a lot of time doing that, and at the same time, you're not very patient, and I think as a young professional, learning the concept of patience is very important. Um, it's great to be aggressive and you want to out hustle everybody, but having some patience is a critical tool as you grow through your professional career. And for me, being patient was the biggest tool for me. But at the end of the
Great.
day, listen, I didn't get a college degree. I went and worked and I figured things out. I've got my master's through many different avenues that apply to real life. And I think there are a few things. Patience is one of them, but always out hustling the other person. If you can out hustle somebody and you can do it professionally and elegantly, and you can lead people along with you, more than not, you're going to win. And for me, you know, during this project, we could have laid down so many times when things got really hard, again, general contractors,
Yep.
COVID, you name it, it's happened. But we didn't quit and we worked even harder the next day. We got back up and worked even harder. And, throughout the whole process, we stayed true to ourselves. And for me, I think and your team knows, and everybody who works for me knows, I'm pretty genuine.
Yep.
What you see is what you get. There's not a lot of hot air that comes out. There's a lot of honesty. There's a lot of directness. But at the end of the day, it's for a purpose. It's for a reason. It's to make us all better. But, I think the biggest thing as an employer, you don't want people guessing. You don't want them to guess, what is your intention? What is it that, is there something I don't know? Is there a secret in the room I don't know? Well, with me, you don't have that. I'm very open and honest. I encourage all our departments to communicate that
Yep.
way. I don't like to work in silos. And to your point, I think building a business is about the people. It's about it's about the strategy, but it's about the people who can deploy it.
No
So
doubt.
throughout my course of business, if I'm a young person, be patient, always out hustle the other person, and stay genuine to yourself and in the way you feel, and your open and honest opinion, and just lead in that fashion, and more than not, you'll win. And
Yep.
you won't win every time, but you'll listen, you just have to win more than you lose. And
It's a long game.
a long
It's
game.
a long
We're here hitting singles and doubles, and we're not looking to hit home runs. In fact, I'd prefer not to hit home runs because I don't want big losses either. So
yeah, that's exactly. I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you.
with that. So
Would you change anything about your career?
I would not. I
Okay.
mean, I think every step of the way was fantastic for my, my growth. And here I am. I'm almost 50 years old, and I've built and sold, 4 businesses. I haven't lost, knock on wood. And it's because I don't do 20 different projects at a time. I find one or two, and I really
Yep.
focus to be the best at one or two things. And I don't divert off the path. And at the end of the day, hopefully, as I get older, I look up and smell the roses a little bit more than I did when I was younger. And, I think for me, that's probably the biggest growth opportunity, is to stop every once in a while, look up, appreciate what you built, and, appreciate the people that have helped you build it. And, I think that, that's critical to where we're at.
All right. Last one. I always finish this way because I love to finish on a positive, which is like, what's the best part of your day right now?
Game days. Honestly, there's so much work going into putting on a 2-hour sporting event or a concert. Every day that I walk into the building and we have a game or an event, it just blows my mind. I can't believe it. All the work has already been done.
Yeah.
You're not making decisions really on those spots. For me, I enjoy those moments. Those are the best part of my day, is really walking in. And I don't care whether it's a lowly attended weekday Clipper game or a sold out NBA or a concert. Every one of those moments for me are pretty surreal.
I love it. Josh, thank you so much for the time. I love the stories. I mean, just an amazing ride thus far. It's just the beginning of Front Wave Arena, and everything that you guys have built to this point is just a launching pad for all the things that are going to continue to come, and amazing events, not only for Front Wave Arena, but the community and everybody involved. So thanks for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate it, man.